Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back. Welcome back all to my Afrikaans-speaking followers. It is Six Nations time. The lineups just got released for the France versus Ireland game, and I have met a young gentleman on TikTok. Once again, it is like the platform for the youngsters, and I met a guy who is, obviously you see the scream name, a very Italian name, but he does live and reside just outside of Birmingham. Is it? Do you guys
That's
say
correct.
Worcestershire or do you say
No.
Worcester? How do you say
Worcester?
Worcester? Okay, so like in
Worcester, yeah.
like in Massachusetts, basically.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
this is Marcello. He is a massive Italian rugby supporter, and when I was going through my predictions for the Six Nations, he seemed to be the only guy that we were pretty much in agreement that I don't think Italy gets the wooden spoon. But go ahead and introduce yourself, Marcello.
Yeah, hi, yeah. Thanks for having me on. Yeah, TikTok is can be quite young, so I guess we're we're sort of part of the older clan when it comes to rugby TikTok. But yeah, I've been running that TikTok account, just a bit of fun, really. I mean, I'd love to say that it's a big deal and I'm trying to make myself famous or anything like that. It is just a bit of fun at the end of the day. There are people on there that take it far more seriously than me. But yeah, I've been enjoying seeing. It's quite nice actually because I don't get a lot of sort of rugby banter and rugby to and fro with many people, especially where I'm from and my friendship group, all very football related. So
of course,
it's been quite nice really to get on there and have a bit of beef with some people on TikTok, which is all fun. It's all fun and games. I enjoy it. But yeah, I've been running that for a little bit. I'm a sports journalist by trade, and
what? Really?
Yeah, sports. I'm a sports reporter. Yeah, that's my job away from messing around on TikTok. Yeah.
Wow. Okay, I did not expect that. And so you're a sports journalist.
Yes.
Do you for online publication or like a newspaper?
Yeah, it's both. So I write for a daily newspaper, and we cover quite a few papers where I work, and I also provide the online stuff as well. So I run the website. So I do both. Yeah, I'm a digital man and a print man. So yeah, that's the day job. So I'm sort of immersed in sport 24/7, pretty much.
Man, I kind of wish my missus was here, man. She was a communications major at university, so she did the radio side of it. So
yeah, I mean, I've done some radio too, actually. When so my main job involved covering Worcester Warriors, who over here in England in the Premiership, unfortunately went bust. So for the first sort of 2.5 years of my job, I was covering them, and I did lots of radio and bits of TV as well for them. So I've done it all. I've done it all, really.
What is your local football team there?
The local, I mean, in terms of what people will know tuning into this, it's probably sort of Birmingham City, Aston Villa, Wolverhampton Wanderers, West Brom. The sort of the Birmingham clubs are the ones that are most local. But then Kidderminster Harriers as well, which is like a lower league team. But
it's you'd be surprised. The Premiership is actually kind of big here in the U.S. I don't watch football; it's just never been my thing. But was the Ted Lasso series big there at all?
it was, you know.
It
was probably. I've never actually clapped eyes on it, but it is something that I've seen a lot of people talk about over here, and there's a few podcasts and some quite high-profile names that are quite big on it, and it created a lot of memes on social media around here. It was quite good for that, actually. So yeah, it was very popular over here. It was, yeah.
I mean, that's good to know, just because, obviously, the series did really well on Apple TV here, and
yeah.
I think it's always the trope of Americans in Europe, and it's always the same stereotypes. It's like when you're in England, it's on the wrong side of the road, or you get stuck in a traffic circle, or the stereotypes about Americans coming there. But then the one that this added was going to take a sip of water and he spits it out because it's carbonated water, and they don't drink carbonated water here really. So but if you're Italian, you definitely drink carbonated water.
You definitely drink it, but I don't like it at all.
I love it in a can. That's just a personal preference. But so we met on TikTok. We're talking rugby. It's like I've got this whole crowd of Irish kids that you've also talked to. I've had one of them on here, and then there's the English fans.
They're the worst. Let's put it right.
No. I'm going to be completely honest with you. I've gotten a lot of ire. My original TikTok account had over 5,000 followers, and it got shut down during the World Cup because I pissed off the Irish. And then most recently, I made some comments about French rugby, and for the first time in my life, I had death threats in my inbox, man.
Wow.
And I just thought it was hilarious, just because, like, for me, of all the nationalities I'm afraid of, France is not one of them. Like, I'm not afraid of French people. Like,
they'd have to travel quite a way to come and get you, to be fair.
Yeah, and I mean, I live in Texas, man. We all have guns here. So,
yeah, man, there we go. Yeah.
But so obviously you have the Italian background and everything, and for me, I didn't really follow the big Italian clubs until the South African teams joined the URC. I remember that, was it the first or second year that Benetton made it to the final that year against, I think, was it the Stormers or the Bulls they played?
So that was, you want about the Rainbow Cup?
The Rainbow
Cup. Yeah, which was it was a COVID thing that they it only lasted once. So Benetton are the one and only holders of the Rainbow Cup.
Yeah. And obviously the success they're having this year, a lot of it led by one of my personal favorite former All Blacks and current Tongan international, the center Malachi Fekitoa. I don't know if you saw him when he was in ESPN magazine. That guy is a chiseled god, man. Like, his body is just like, like, wow.
It was a big signing for Benetton, actually. I think that was one of those signings that are made that makes a bit of a statement and shows where Italian rugby is at the moment, and especially where Benetton are at the moment. Benetton are now a side that aren't just Italian internationals. They have built and they've brought in some, there are some, they've had South Africans, you said, Fekitoa. They've got foreign players there as well, which means that when the Six Nations does roll around and they've still got to play club rugby, they don't sort of fall off the face of a cliff. So that's been the main thing. And Fekitoa, is one of many brilliant centres at Benetton. Benetton are blessed with midfielders. I mean, Fekitoa, Marcello, who's one of the best centres in the world at the moment. Brex as well, another Italian international. Drago, Zanon. These are all players that are international standards. So it was great to see him. And Fekitoa is a big signing, not just in a rugby sense, but sort of just making a statement, and from a marketing point of view as well. It was a great get for them.
Definitely. No, when he went from was he playing with Wasps? Yeah, yes, and then signed to that. And I remember hearing that and kind of seeing that, and like even shooting him a message, because like I met Malachi in New Zealand, like, and shooting him a message like, really? And he was like, watch, dude. He was like, start following, watch. They're on the move. And I'm like, what? He's like, yeah, they're on the move, man. And then you have the opposite side of the coin. Also in the URC, you have Zebra Parma, and they've struggled, obviously. I didn't understand, so I reached out to a former Benetton hooker. He's an Argentine-born Benetton hooker. I don't know if you know who I'm talking about. I asked him, hey, what's the difference? And he was saying that Benetton is privately owned, and I guess Zebra is owned by Rugby Italia. The gentleman played last year here in Dallas. I don't know if you know who I'm even talking about.
I'm trying to rack my brain now. You've put me on the spot.
Thomas Baravalle.
Okay. Yeah.
Awesome dude, tall as hell, speaks like 4 languages because he's played rugby his whole life. I don't know if he's going to be back here this year, and even if he is, I don't really follow. So we had a pretty big injection of Argentines in the side this last year, with the head coach obviously being the former attack coach for the U20s. They're in Italy and played his entire career there, and we actually had a couple of guys end up playing club domestic rugby in Italy this year as well that came from here. So, but obviously Benetton currently sitting second in the standings as of this morning. Yeah, they're second, right? Behind Leinster and looking good halfway through the midway mark through the season, hopefully looking to finish strong as we go in. And what are your predictions? Are you hoping that you think Benetton has another serious chance at winning the whole thing? Or do you think it's just like, hey, I'll be happy if we make it to the final? Or how are your feelings about it?
I said before the season started that after the last sort of 2 seasons, Benetton are building something very special. They have a big squad, plenty of cash available, like you said. They're a real force. They still haven't lost at home this season. It's a bit of a fortress at Stadio Monigo. They've been brilliant. I think they came so close to beating Munster as well. So one of those draws could have easily been a win, and they could have easily been top of the table. So, yeah, I think before the season started, I thought that playoffs was their target. I thought that was somewhere that I think that was a realistic aim for them. And then midway through the season, the second in the table, obviously still unbeaten at home, going great guns in Europe as well. I think that given the position they're in, and with the Six Nations rolling around now, I think people will assume that Benetton have so many Italians that when those Italians go away, they will sort of be left with quite a weak squad. But with the foreigners they've been able to bring in the last couple of seasons, they're now in a position where actually that squad is still able to compete, and against other clubs in the URC that are probably going to be more heavily affected by that. I think there's no reason they can't just keep going. And there's another. I think if they can get, if they can play some of those playoff games at home, there's no reason why they couldn't. I don't want to say go all the way, because I still think there are probably sides better than them with more experienced players in there in terms of winning an actual championship. I think that's probably maybe a step too far for Benetton at this stage, but there is no reason why they would fear anyone at the moment. And playoffs for sure. And then once you get to the playoffs, anything can happen. So I think they're in a great position at the moment.
I think the big meme that's been going around South Africa is the guy in the yellow suit behind the tree doing this with his hand. And it's like the SAURC side's waiting for Six Nations because they know they're going to bowl through people during that because all the nations are going to be depleted of players. But obviously, it's a competition that we didn't have an ease of access to watch it here in North America until this year, really. Whenever Flow Sports picked up the coverage. Before that, you had to pay the website, and it was expensive, and the coverage wasn't very good. So we've been lucky. And then obviously, my colleague at work jailbreaking my Fire Stick so I can watch TNT Sport just like you guys. So, and it's great to watch coverage on overseas television. But I do agree with you. They are a solid side. I do definitely pick them to finish at the top of the heap. Maybe not champions, but definitely like in the final 4 or 5 teams that could win it. They're definitely in the conversation. I don't even know. Honestly, I only see one South African team in that conversation right now, and it's probably either the Bulls or Stormers, but we'll just have to see how that waits out. So then, obviously, we'll take a step back a little bit. We see last year's Six Nations, which was recorded in a Netflix series. I'm sure you've probably had a chance to check out some of that. And it's kind of a bit for me not knowing the background of some of these Italian players, not knowing about the one from Negri, the Zimbabwean-born player, having no idea that, like, it's not a unique situation. David Pocock with the Wallabies was obviously also from Zimbabwe, moved to Australia, but, like, they left before anything bad happened. With him, it was like, no, they lost their farm. The government said, no, we're taking your farm. And you're like, what a kind of a devastating thing to experience as a kid, but then finding a home in Italy and finding a home with a team and being able to play for a national team that you're proud to play for. And you kind of see with the background, the former Canadian coach who was at that time your head coach there in Italy. It looks like, I remember him getting the job, and it was based off of what he did with Benetton, right? That was how he got the head coaching job at Italy. And then you go to the World Cup. Because the All Blacks were playing so mid after the thrashing at Twickenham by us, getting beat by France in the opening pool game, I'm thinking, you know what? This is a right moment. Italy can come out. Capuzzo was on fire. I'm thinking this is the moment that you guys come out. And I still picked the All Blacks, but I was like, Italy's going to put these guys on their back. It's going to be a good game. And then you come out, and it was probably between two tier one nations, probably the biggest stinker in the entire tournament. And I'm pretty sure you would agree with that. Where do you think that right there was kind of the end for the Crowley coaching job, or do you think it was already did you already see the writing on the wall by that point?
Well, actually, so probably pretty sure you're not aware that he was told that he was having his contract ended before the World Cup. So I
did not know this.
He was told by the federation that his contract wouldn't be extended past the World Cup, and that in February or January a new coach would be brought in Quesada, who is now the head coach. So yeah, Crowley went into a World Cup campaign
knowing he didn't have a job afterwards,
knowing that the job wasn't his afterwards anyway. So when you take that into consideration, I think beforehand we all thought as fans that maybe that would give the players something to really work for and make sure that Crowley has come in and, like I said, at Benetton, applied his trade there and then came into the international job. And over the last sort of 2 years, Kieran Crowley has sort of changed the way Italy play, changed the way people perceive Italian rugby, changed the way people perceive the national side.
The culture. Yeah, he's changed absolutely. The rugby culture.
And it was that culture of we're going to just play. We're going to play rugby. It doesn't matter what part of the pitch we're in, we're just going to play. Now, that obviously gave us that win in Cardiff against Wales, which ended a long time without a win in the Six Nations. We also we beat Australia as well in the autumn. So it was starting to bring results as well. So going into a World Cup campaign, we were really excited, really. And then when that news dropped that Crowley was going to be relieved of his duties afterwards, it was a big shock. Didn't expect it. No one wanted it. Everyone was very upset by it because it felt like he'd started something and he wasn't finished. That's how it felt. It felt like he still had... it was just at the beginning of things were starting to go well and he was starting to build something really special. So I think all of that going into a World Cup, especially knowing that we were going to end that campaign against France and New Zealand, it was always going to be really tough. And being talked up by everyone outside, including us, stupidly, really. And I think it was just a game where we were going to come under pressure at some point, and it was how we dealt with that. And we are still a very young squad. It's keen to note. We're led by a captain who is very young himself. It is a squad that is lacking in experience, big time. So much quality, but I think in that moment, that game, for that 80 minutes, we saw a side that just weren't in terms of an experience, just weren't there. And I think the moment, the occasion, once they'd scored a couple of tries and the pressure was really on and New Zealand were really coming at Italy, I think some of those young players started to hide a little bit. And I think it just all collapsed very quickly. And if you collapse against New Zealand, you're in big, big trouble. And that's basically what happened. And then you go into a France game. On the back of that, it was always going to be, right, how do they respond, knowing that we had to win if we fancied any chance of going through. But I don't think anyone was really fussed by that. It was a case of, we've almost been stuck 100 points. We need to show something in that next game. And against the hosts, against the World Cup favourites, in front of a home crowd, that was a wave too strong to sort of resist. And I think we'll have learned a lot from those two games. I think you can't not learn a huge deal in terms of going through that, experiencing it, and making sure that it doesn't happen again. And this Six Nations, with Benetton playing really well and Zebre Palma as well, improving massively on the last couple of seasons. They've got a couple of wins. They're in the round of 16 for the Challenge Cup. So everything we've got players that are in good form. We've got a good squad to choose from. There's options available to us. A new era under Quesada. I think they'll be really keen to sort of show people what they're about and show that those 2 games against New Zealand and France were very much a blip in the road. Obviously a big blip, but a blip in the road.
I think this was a unique World Cup. I mean, obviously you're 27, so this wasn't a lot of these younger guys. This was maybe their second World Cup that they can really remember.
Yeah.
And I think it was a unique World Cup in the fact that usually you only have one group of death. We had 2 group of deaths. A and B were both group of deaths.
Yeah,
somebody who was ranked was not going to make it out of that pool. And I think it was just unfortunate with this information because I did not know that they weren't extending his contract. Things do. It was the perfect storm. It was a recipe for disaster. We saw the results. But now that is behind us. We're looking to go into the Six Nations. It starts this weekend. Obviously, the big game is the one tomorrow with the 2 favorites to win the tournament. And you have to kind of think, what are you expecting to see under the new coaching? Are you expecting any major changes, or do you think he's just going to continue to kind of build on the foundation that was laid by his predecessor?
It's a bit of both, I think. I think the noises coming out of the camp. We speak to a lot of the boys in there. We sort of speak to a lot of people in and around that Italian camp. Is that Quesada will certainly try and shore Italy up a little bit. There'll be a bit more focus on defence. There will be a bit more focus on playing the game in the right areas. A better kick game, a better kick chase, a better kick defence. So he'll bring a little bit more pragmatism to this Italian side whilst also trying to sort of continue to allow these incredibly talented players to play the game they want to play. And, we've seen it in the past 18 months how good Italy can be with ball in hand and when they're attacking, and, they're one of the best sides at it around. So I think he'll want to keep a lot of that. But at the same time, there will be a definite, we're hoping that we'll see an Italy side that are a little bit more switched on, a little bit more organised, and playing the game in the right areas rather than just running everything from everywhere. There'll be a little bit more of a pragmatic approach. So that's what we're hoping for anyway.
I still think the big elephant in the room, and you hear it every single year, and I disagree with it, which is people who will call for Italy to be dropped from the Six Nations. Like, it should be a rotating team in, bring in Romania, bring in Georgia. Yeah. I am not pro that. And I will let you know mainly the reason why is because I don't think financially Georgia or Romania could keep up. No. I mean, it's cool to see them. It's cool to see Georgia and Romania do okay and whatever, but they're not Six Nations level. I think that much like when Argentina joined the Tri Nations to become the Rugby Championship, it takes time. It takes time to get good. They're now able to beat the All Blacks. They're now able to beat the Wallabies. They're now able to beat the Springboks. It does take time. But I think Italy is also in a unique situation because you're playing against basically the countries that have been playing it since the beginning of the game.
Yeah.
It's not any new nations or anything like that, and it's going to take time. But I do believe that in time you will see. You look at even with Italian national football team, it goes up and down, ebbs and flows, ebbs and flows. And I do understand this much, though. Much like a lot of people think rugby is big all over France, it's really just big in the south of France, it seems. And it seems like with rugby, it's really big just in northern Italy, it seems. Yeah. Is that really the case? Is it really just a northern Italy thing, or?
It is, yeah. I mean, there's so much going on with the federation in terms of where do we have teams based, where do we have academies based. The club rugby, the Italian domestic league as well is where are the sides based, and trying to grow the game all around the country because, like you said, it is a problem. I think in most places. So obviously in England, there's a a north-south divide really as well. There aren't many teams up in the north, and most of them are Midlands and Southwest type thing in England.
Isn't league bigger up
Yeah,
north?
yeah. So
Okay,
rugby league
yeah,
is massive in the north, and obviously there's no one plays rugby league below the Midlands area. So rugby league is big in the north, and rugby union isn't particularly, and it's far bigger down sort of central and southwestern England. But yeah, it's Italian rugby. There's so much going on in terms of how are they trying to grow the game. It's still not taught in schools. This is a sport that still isn't taught.
It's a club sport.
If you want to play it, you've got to go and find a club and play. Like it's not something that's ingrained in children from a young age. It's obviously all football and other sports, but not rugby. And rugby is probably 6th, 7th biggest sport in Italy ultimately. So there is always that. But it's certainly growing, and having a successful international side will certainly help, and having successful club sides will certainly help. So the idea that Benetton are really on the up, and if that Italian side can continue in that vein, and obviously we need wins for that. I think I'm not going to shy away from the fact that we've won one game in 8-9 years, so it's got to be better than that. It has to be. We can't. With the topic of relegation and promotion, look, I'm a rugby fan. I want the game to grow. So we've seen how good Portugal were in the World Cup. We saw how good they were, and the idea of being able to see those sides get their chance is what we're after. So I've never really been against a promotion relegation as long as it's set up properly, because I don't think we would lose to a side like Georgia or Portugal. I just don't think we would. But it's one of those, and if we can keep progressing, that will help. And obviously, ticket sales have been really good for this tournament. We've sold 120,000 for the 2 games so far against England and Scotland, which is in the Stadio Olimpico, which is so big. The biggest we've had, I think, was about 74,000 in 2013.
Jesus. Who was that against?
That one was against Wales, Ireland, when we beat Ireland 22-15 back in 2013, I think it was. There was 74,000 there. So we've obviously got a huge stadium, and the attendances haven't always been up there, and they've been as low as sort of 50,000 in the past. So the idea that it's looking good that we're selling more tickets, more people want to come and watch, and we're a team that people want to watch. But now we need to match that with wins. We need wins. We need something to cling on to here. So that's the aim for us this year. It'll be, can we get a win under our belt? Can we get 2 wins under our belt? I think realistically we were looking at 2 games in Scotland in Rome and Wales away in Cardiff. I think
that's going to be tough. That's going to be tough.
I think we'd potentially play Scotland. If Scotland come to Rome having lost 2-3 games, that takes on that's a bigger thing for Scotland then, isn't it? And then the same with Wales. If Wales have lost 4 games coming up to playing us, then it's a different story. But I think we can cause England problems on Saturday. They've got a new side, a new squad. They've got their injury problems. That squad is going to look very different to what we saw in the Rugby World Cup. So, again, our players are in real, confidence-wise, and with their clubs, they're in a really good place. So I'm confident that we can be as competitive as we were last Six Nations. We didn't win a game, but we should have beaten France. We should have beaten Scotland. And we came close to beating Ireland as well. So we were pretty much in every game we played. We weren't ever thrashed. So hopefully we can continue that, but actually get a win under our belt. That'll be the aim for this Six Nations.
You talk about some kind of marquee victories that the Italians have had. I'm going to throw a date at you, and I'm going to see if you can remember what game it was and what happened that day.
Okay.
It was the 19th of November, 2016.
Yeah, I think I know what this was.
Who did you beat that day?
That was in Florence, and that was against the Springboks. Our first ever win against the Springboks.
I was absolutely devastated when that happened.
That was when South African rugby was on the floor, wasn't it? It was in probably the worst place it's ever been.
It was Coetzee. Alistair Coetzee was the coach, who's now the coach at Namibia. that was kind of one of those. That was the first time I ever looked at Italian rugby and went like, who the hell are these guys?
Yeah.
And I fell in love with your number 8. Unfortunately, it was towards the end of his career.
As does everybody. As does everyone.
Yeah, Sergio Parisi was, man, that guy was, we would say the shit here in America. That guy was badass and still wanted to play in 2023. He still wanted to come back and play. And it's just like, you see guys like that and you just like, those are the guys that like, that's what you need. And I think you have a couple of those guys like that now. I think Capuzzo is that guy. Like, that guy lives and breathes this game. And he is absolutely, when we did the Northern Tour, we did beat you guys last, was it last year or the year before?
Yeah, last year.
And he was like the guy that I saw and was like, who is this guy? And it was just like, damn, this guy's really good. And then obviously the injection of Montiawani into the squad with, God, I don't know if you follow him on social media. That guy has, I'm heavily tattooed. That guy makes me look like I have none.
Yeah,
he's like neck, back of the head, everything. And it's just like, he's one of those guys that has made, and there's a lot of guys that have done that. Sir John Kerwin, the former All Black, he speaks Italian. He coached Italy. Like, his son was born there. Nico was born there. And it's something that I think also you kind of want to bring up kind of the future of Italy. Italy is a country that has a mass influx of immigration. A lot of it North African, obviously, at this point in time. But I think it changes the landscape of the game and the future for the game there, because you're going to have a whole generation of kids that like want to play for Italy because it's their home. It's now their home. And hopefully that can translate into some nice up and comers. Your U20 squad the last couple of years has been, I mean, it's not bad. It's not bad at all.
No, and we've our age group teams have for the last 3 or 4 years been more than competitive. Like, our under 20s finished third a couple of years ago. We've beaten England. We've had some big wins, and only recently our under 20s beat France in a warm up game, a friendly game. Our under 18s have beaten Ireland in a series. So
the future is bright. The future
it's huge. It's very bright. It's about making sure what we do with that talent when it comes through. It's about finding them the clubs. It's feeding them through to. Where do we feed them through to? We've only got 2 professional clubs, so it's where do we put them?
Kind of
and that's the problem. And the standard of rugby in the Italian domestic league is good, but it's not sort of up to scratch with the countries elsewhere. When you're comparing it to maybe England and France and whatnot. There's a lot of positives, but ultimately the buck stops with the federation and how they try and the way they want to go, but also it's where is our game ingrained in terms of the country itself? That will always be something that is not something that changes overnight. And the only way that the game of rugby grows in Italy is if the national team are seen more, people buy tickets, people go and watch the game, and ultimately, when we win games of rugby, that is what people want to see. People want to go and watch a team be successful. That is what gets bums on seats. So that's what needs to happen, and then until we can start not finishing bottom of the Six Nations and consistently not being beaten every year, until we can be at that stage, we will always be a little bit held back. But there is certainly lots to be positive about, and certainly a lot of good things happening underneath the international side.
They have come here and played. Italy played in Chicago at Soldier Field.
They did. When was that?
20. Hold on. Let me pull up Professor Google here, and I can tell you.
Trying to think who did we play? Was it the States?
Yeah. Hold on. No. It might have been. Hold on.
Because Chicago holds a lot of internationals. I know Ireland have beat New Zealand a few years ago.
You played Ireland.
Oh yes,
in 2018. And
I remember.
I was at that game, and
Yeah,
obviously
Italy did. Italy, I think Italy also played. No, that was Wales. Wales played in Chicago. In
DC.
Wales played a game in the States as well. I seem to remember.
Wales versus the Springboks outside of Washington D.C.
Oh, I remember watching that game, and that was maybe one of the worst games of rugby I've ever watched in my life. And that is no joke.
Do you want to know what that game was? Do you want to know what that was? That was Rassi Erasmus. SA Rugby was broke. They did it for a $200,000 check.
Yeah,
it was
awful.
It was to float their union. Yeah, it was embarrassing. I'm glad I didn't go to that. I would have been so upset. But Soldier Field in Chicago, and I've had a lot of people talk to me about the 2031 Rugby World Cup coming here. I will go ahead and place a wager that will be where the final will be held. Will be Chicago. Just because it's the only proper size stadium, dimensions, et cetera, et cetera. But we did recently find out the FIFA World Cup final. Yeah, right here in Dallas, Fort Worth at Jerry World, as they say, AT&T Stadium. I'm wondering how they're going to pull that off because it is an indoor stadium. So but
that's another thing to consider, because I know Italy are trying to stage the 2035 Rugby World Cup.
Oh, that would be dope.
And if you can do, that's what you need. You need to do something like that to sort of grow the game a bit. And
look at Japan.
Yeah, exactly. Japan. So that's what needs to happen, and hopefully we'll get that, because I think that's a joint bid with hosting the European Championships in 2032 or something along those lines. They want to be able to bid for the football Euros and then host the Rugby World Cup.
I'm trying to think how old I would be then, and I don't want to think about it because it makes me sad. But dude, going to a Rugby World Cup in Italy would be dope because it's all within one country, one time zone. Here in America, we have 5 time zones, so it's like
still be super, super cool though. Rugby World Cup in the States would be.
I've already let my employer know I'm going to need like 2 months off because I'm going to be going to every single bloody game. I still do live in a bit of worry though that it's even going to happen here. Just for you want to talk about an issue with a union. USA Rugby has declared bankruptcy 3 times in 5 years. It's not our domestic league finally got a players union this year. So, but just kind of not really my thing. How you're obviously in England. We all hear what's going on with the Premiership. Do you feel that it's gonna stabilize, or do you still think there's gonna be some teams that get axed before it stabilizes?
What a question. English rugby's it's like a real crossroads moment over here in terms of the RFU funding, what money they'll pump into the top flight, what money will they pump into. They seem very reluctant to engage and support the league below, which is the real problem. But clubs are obviously struggling, and rugby is just not a money-making machine. It really isn't. I know that there are quite a few more clubs in the Premiership that are struggling. And when things start to go bad, look at Newcastle Falcons, for example. When they've lost every single game this season, and
they're not even trying because there's no relegation.
The crowds start really dramatically dropping, and that's when money starts to really become an issue, and that's when it can all start going dreadfully wrong. So, it needs some real guidance from people that know what they're doing, because at the moment it's still not looking
shaky.
Great. It's on shaky ground, and it's constantly on shaky ground.
I still think like every story needs a villain. I've always made Owen Farrell my villain. I've always hated the guy ever since for a while now. The British and Irish Lions tour of New Zealand was when I really started hating that guy. But with him obviously bouncing, going to France, I think like a lot of people that threw red flags up for a lot of people. They were like, something seriously. And you're not the only Englishman I've talked to. I don't ever talk politics. I think Brexit had a really big damper on a lot of that as well. I think the desirability to stay within the UK has diminished a bit because of it.
Yeah, I
I
mean,
don't.
Brexit is just it's. I don't even feel qualified enough to talk about it. But
Neither do I. I'm not a politician. Yeah.
all I know is that it's just been bad for everything. I can't really see what positive it's had. But yeah, I'm no politician.
I'm not a politician either, and I hate talking politics because I think it's boring. But you just have to kind of look at the landscape of how everything is. Like French rugby, obviously, those teams their payrolls are absolutely massive compared to any other competition in the world. No wonder you have a team like Racing 92 that has all the top stars on it, and it kind of makes you wonder, like, where is that? And I know it's a lot of foreign investment that really helps. You saw with the premiership in football in your country, when you have foreign investment, it really my colleague who's from Newcastle, they got bought out by a foreigner, and look at how well it's helped the team. And maybe that's what the premiership in rugby needs to look at foreign investment into the clubs to kind of see if they can pump in some added capital and buy some of these stars and keep them in England. Because I think that's a really tough task at times, is to keep, there's not every rugby union has that rule. I know that Ireland has it. Does England, you have to play in England to play for England, right?
You do. Yeah.
Ireland's the same way. Obviously, New Zealand is trying. They keep talking about changing their rules. Australia, you don't. South Africa, they wouldn't exist if they had that rule, because nobody wants to stay in South Africa when you can make good money elsewhere. Italy, you're allowed to play wherever, obviously. And I think rightfully so when you only have two top clubs really to feed into it. But Benetton looks good. I think this is all good things. You've basically, what I felt, I wondered what trajectory Italy was on. You've pretty much confirmed it for me. You're doing the Japan route. You're trying to do everything.
Well, we want to be a bit more sustainable than Japan. That's the same thing in terms of they obviously had their peak. And then it seems to have lost its way a little bit. So but that can happen.
I don't think Eddie Jones is going to help it.
Well, yeah. I mean, good luck with that. Good luck, Japan.
I called that way before it was even rumored. I called it. I pulled up my WhatsApp conversation with somebody. I was like, Eddie Jones will be in Japan, and they're like, no, he's in Australia. And I'm like, this is a quick stop for him. And if you ever feel bad about English rugby, just look at Australia. Yeah, that's even worse. But predictions, you think at least one win in the Six Nations for the Italians. I believe a win against Wales at Millennium there in Cardiff is not out of. I don't think that's out of reach. I think a win at Wales. Definitely.
Wales are a young side going through transition themselves. Look, we hosted Wales last year as favourites, pretty much favourites in a game that we hadn't ever had that really, and didn't deal with that all that well. So I think we'll have learned a lot from that. I think definitely looking at Cardiff, and that's the one for us where we will be looking at thinking we've got to go here and win. If we can't beat this Wales side, people will just continue to ask questions, and I really hope for that. I think Scotland at home as well, depending on how they go. Look, if they win 2 games and they're in the conversation for a Grand Slam or potentially competing for the title, then it could be different. But they come into that game on the back of a couple of defeats, and almost that game takes on a bigger. I think we can give everybody a game. I really do. Ireland and France, I think, are a level above the rest of the teams. So definitely. those games, you just want to be competitive and you want to give as good as you get. But then when you play England, Scotland, and Wales, for me, those are games that we are looking at and thinking there is no reason we can't beat these sides. There really isn't. We've got the players, got the ability. Look, we're coming into a competition with a new coach who hasn't had a lot of time, so there are obviously going to be some teething problems in that regard. But look, we want to be competitive. That's what we want to do. We want to be competitive, respond to that World Cup campaign, and but beating Wales in Cardiff will be the one for us, really. But any game, there really isn't any reason we can't go into those games against Scotland, England, and Wales, thinking there's no reason we can't win. So
Yeah.
I don't want to predict anything because the last time I tried predicting something, we got absolutely tonked by New Zealand and France. So that didn't go too well. So I've told myself I'm not going to go and make any predictions on any platform. I'm just going to say we want to be competitive, and that's what I want us to be. And I think we can do that. So if we can do that, the wins should come. But we'll see.
Yeah, I still think tomorrow the game that kicks it all off with Ireland and France.
That'll be who wins it, I think, most likely.
I'm going to go ahead and say, because I do talk to a lot of Irish fans on here, I think their head is in the clouds a bit. Like losing somebody like Johnny Sexton, that's not going to be an easy thing to recover from at all. No. And not having Dupont and Ntimak with France, it's not going to be an easy thing to recover at all. I think both of those sides are going into this competition with their heads pretty held high. And I think that there might be some points where there's a bit of a reality check for both of those sides that, hey, maybe you're not nearly as good as you think you are. We talked about disappointing performances in the World Cup. To me, I still think the most disappointing performance of that entire tournament might have been Ireland. Like going out in a quarterfinal like the way they did, it was embarrassing. But, I don't know how you felt about it. I obviously, you would have loved to have seen your team make it through, but.
Absolutely, yeah. Sorry about the dog.
Oh, no, I've got one too, man, so don't worry about it.
Girlfriend's dog.
Yours sounds like a big dog. Mine's a little this.
It's not mine. I'm at my girlfriend's house, and she's got a big black Labrador crossed with an Alsatian, so he's a big fella. He's stopped now. There's someone's just walked through the door. I think the winner will come from that game. I think France and Ireland.
I agree.
France and Ireland are a level above. But given the game is in Marseille in front of 65 French. 65,000 French, that is going to be some atmosphere and that's going to be some occasion. So I give France the edge because they're playing that at home. I think if Ireland were playing France at home, I'd probably give them the edge. So I think we're sort of looking at. But I still think, France, yes, they've lost Dupont and Ntimak, but in Luku and Jalibert, Jalibert's been one of the most informed players across the whole season in Europe. So that is a very, very good person to have. I mean, he's arguably just as good as Ntimak in my opinion. Whereas Ireland, losing Sexton and now looking at your tens, that's a big drop off, and those are big boots to fill.
Yeah,
I still think France on paper have the best squad and the best sort of individuals. So that's why I'd give them the nod. Yeah. And the fact they're playing at home. So I'm not sure if there'll be a Grand Slam. I don't think any of the sides are that good.
Yeah.
Purely because Ireland and France have got their injury problems and missing some key players. But yeah, I think I give France the edge.
Okay, all right. Well, it cracks off tomorrow. I don't know wherever you're watching from. Find out. I know here in the U.S., NBC Peacock app is who's carrying the Six Nations here. The Six Nations U20s are also carried here by Flow Sports, so I'll probably try and watch a bit of that. Mostly just to honestly watch Italy.
Good.
Of the U20 side, that's probably that's the one that I'm interested in the most. Because we've seen the success that they're having, and more than anything in this interview, I wanted to figure out not just the state of Italian rugby, but how's the future looking, and the future is looking good.
Yeah, it is. I'd go along with that.
It's always the big four nations that we always talk about in the Northern Hemisphere, and then obviously South Africa and New Zealand. But there needs to be, we got Japan in 2019 becoming tier one. We really need to see, I think we need to see those lower tier one teams kind of take a step up so we can bring in more tier ones.
100%.
I still think the USA is a long way away from that, but
they weren't a long way, but they're short at the moment. It seems a while away.
I watched them beat Scotland in Houston, Texas. That was I had I'll have to post the photo sometime. I had my head shaved. I had a USA jersey on. I had an American flag shorts on, and like a blue headband, and that was absolutely epic. And I've kind of made my statement as to where I think USA Rugby kind of fell off, and I think Major League Rugby is a big part of that. But we're not here to talk about that. We talked about it. man, I just want to thank you for coming on. I know you're a busy man. You're always
No
working.
worries.
Obviously, now I know what you do for a living, and I'm a bit shocked because that's not what I expected you to say. I honestly thought you were going to say like IT, computers.
IT. Oh gosh,
Yeah,
no, no,
yeah.
no, no,
Well,
no.
because
That's not my bag.
you're a younger bloke, you know. I mean,
Yeah, I am a younger bloke, but in
yeah,
terms of my knowledge of IT, no, that is not me. No.
yeah. I actually yeah, I work in service support for a German printing press manufacturer. I do all their tools, so it's what happens when you know the metric system. It's not everybody here is keen on the metric
Yeah,
system. So,
that sounds far too complicated for me. Far
just
too complicated.
ratchets, wrenches, screwdrivers, that
I
kind
just
of
talk
thing.
about
But
sport. I just talk about sport. That's me.
yeah,
That's
it
all I
does.
do.
It does beg the question because when I was originally at uni, I was a music major, and the reason I changed my major was because I was told that you will hate music after a while.
Hmm.
Did you Did you majored in journalism? I imagine at
Sport,
university.
yeah, sports journalism, even more specifically. Yeah,
Has it made you hate it anymore, or do you
I
actually like?
all I love sport. I know I'm a massive football fan. I'm a big rugby fan. Like, I just
Yeah,
love everything about it. So I will never not love that. So it's impossible to do that. It will never make me hate sport. Nothing will ever make me hate sport. I'll tell you that for free.
that's awesome, man. You're living the dream. There's a lot of us out here. I don't want to. People always like ask me, "Hey, what's the goal of what you're doing?" I don't know. I just like talking about rugby with people
Yeah,
from all around the world. It's a game. It's a
me too.
global game, and it's a beautiful game.
Yeah,
It's absolutely. I think if more people got into rugby in America, they'd probably have a bit fuller lives.
absolutely.
But yeah, man, thank you once again for coming on. I will allow you to get on with
Appreciate
the
it.
rest of your day, and
Thank you.
we will add your social media links underneath the
Quality.
header here. And yeah, thanks for coming on, man. Appreciate it.
Appreciate it too. Yeah, you look after yourself. I'll speak to you soon.
All right, man. Cheers.
Ta-da.